Hey guys, joining the 3+0 hourly Crazy House Arena for one game. Going to record one game and analyze it afterward. So I'm going to counter d4 with d5. Don't always play like this, these symmetrical systems, but I'm going to play classically for the sake of this video. Seems like a timid move, blocking his dark square bishop in. Don't mind the capture there. I'll just have to defend that pawn. I think it's not so bad to place a bishop back on d7. It is blocked by this e6 pawn, but it defends here. And after I kick this knight with a future f6, this pawn would become a little bit weaker, so it would defend that pawn nicely. And here I will play f6. If I had taken that, his knight gets in, forking my queen in that weak c6 pawn. And this seems a little bit safer to me. So, just create battery on c2. He'll take one of these. Take the pawn. It's a trivial decision, so I shouldn't take that much time on it. Let's do take with the pawn and just see how the structure works out. I want to get this knight out and castle ASAP. This is a weak diagonal for me, but I've still got that. I've got that covered right now, and he doesn't have anything to place on it. So let's bring this knight to h6. That's unconventional, sure, but that's the point. That's the downside of him having the pawn on e3 now. Take. Let's try that. Take here. I'll take here. The queen covers g7. Okay. If I take here, I'll take on f6, I imagine. That might be okay for me. I've got a pawn drop here, bishop drop here. Huh. Well, I was going to say discomfiture is king first. I'll pick up this knight with a bishop. If I place bishop here, he'll again take on f6. I'd like to secure that somehow. Okay, now if he takes on f6, I can place a pawn on e2 and advance. Okay, he's allowing it. That should be made. Yeah, that's made. Rook takes, pawn takes queen, and the knight's coming to e2. Okay, so we didn't see that little tactic at the end. But otherwise, it was a pretty interesting game. So I'm gonna actually I'll just go straight to the analysis board. And yeah, here we go. Withdraw. Okay, let's take a look at this. Okay, so the first surprise was this e3 move, and that's a little bit strange. Normally they bring the bishop out first, like in the London, before putting that pawn on e3. That e3 move seems a little bit passive to me. I'd rather get that bishop outside the pawn chain where it's more active. So because he didn't bring his bishop out, I claim this diagonal. And now a knight out over the pawn. This is a weak pawn, but it's pretty easily defended by the bishop on d7, takes, and I don't want to capture here. As I was saying, he gets that knight, and that's unpleasant for me because he attacks both these squares. If I try to defend it, it's got a bishop here, and I'm in a very suspect position. So yeah, I don't want to take that. I want to try to force his pieces out of my territory, and that's what this f6 move accomplishes. He captures. I recapture the pawn. Again, don't want to recapture the queen because that gives him some weaknesses that he can play for to exploit. So the pawn secures these dark squares, and my queen can't be hit. Brings the knight out. Yeah, I think that's okay. So he kind of has to take one of these bishops or defend his pawn. He elects to take. And I spent a little bit of time on this decision, but I took the e-pawn, ultimately. Either way is fine, I'm sure. I was looking at something like this, and block the bishop, and the rook gets unleashed, but then I do have some light square weaknesses. Weak pawn here, weak pawn here, pawn here. It's playable for sure. I mean, I can just place a bishop or something eventually. But it's fine also just take with this e-pawn and go to stranglehold on some of his light squares. And now if he places a bishop on h5, I can just take, queen takes, and replace that bishop. And I brought the knight out to h6 to try to land it on g4 eventually. Knight e7 is playable. I was also considering that, of course. But where's it going? All these squares that it could jump to are currently occupied. So this would be a completely nullified piece. Well, it could be valuable in defending my light squares, but I'd rather have that as an active piece. So bringing it out to h6, and now e3, opening up this dark square bishop. I did take. I was thinking about just knight here. Something like this would be fine, I think. Maybe takes, and I've got some options here. And maybe I take here first, so it doesn't have a pawn drop there. And after the recapture, then I've got something like some pawn drops to create some nasty threats on his light squares, something like this. So that was possible, a possible continuation. But I took, foreseeing that my queen defends this g7 square at the very end of this tactical line. It's a little bit of a sharper line than the one I just showed. Queen takes. Now knight takes d5. I wasn't expecting that. That just gives me a little bit more material. And I'm not sure about the wisdom of that. Maybe he was anticipating something like bishop e4, trying to play an intermezzo move, but no, that fails to knight takes f6. The big nasty fork. So I first wanted to displace his king. Even if he takes, that's fine. I've got knight drops or whatever, but I don't mind losing that pawn. I want to displace his king before he can castle and get to safety. So that's a nice intermezzo. And now, yeah, it's important to pick this knight off before it can create any more mayhem with the knight drop here, knight takes here. So I want to do everything with tempo. I do pick that knight off with tempo on the queen, which is important. And so, okay, if he took here, I expect he's threatening this rook. I would love to play like a pawn here or something. Can't takes because that's pinned, but he has some threats which probably need to be addressed. So I was thinking just bishop at g7. I think that would cover. He has no drops on, so I'll put this on the board. He has no drops on f7. That's covered. He has no checks really. Yeah, he can't come to the e-file to check me, and that's covered. Take here, that's doing nothing. He'll probably just have to retreat, and then I've got my king looks a little bit open with these open f and e-file, but it's actually not the case because I have good coverage with all these pieces converging around my king side, so I'm quite safe actually. And then wherever he backs off to, say f4 or h4, yeah, my attack's going to come pretty swiftly. And take here, that's probably the correct continuation. Exposing his king, and knock his queen around some more, land a knight in one of these squares, try and land a pawn there eventually after capturing. Something like that. Yeah, I think black is much better here. So instead he placed pawn at e4, blocking. And what was I considering here? Oh, I was considering a bishop here for that same idea, trying to place a pawn on e2. But I was a little bit worried about the fact that this rook is hanging again at the end of this line. And I don't have a bishop here. Oops, a bishop to play, bishop or pawn, actually, to place at the tempo. I might even be able to get away with this. Taking here now, it comes with check. I'm still threatening mate, but I'd rather not give him that option, give him that play. So I might as well just shut it down. Take here first. Now if he takes, which he did not, but if he takes now, now I can place his bishop here. Yeah, now I can place his bishop here with the same ideas I just showed beforehand. I've got a battery on this. That's going to be dangerous for him, for sure. And I've got a pawn coming here. Yeah, this is good for black. So I think it's important to ensure this capture first. Takes. Bishop here, and he didn't see this threat of a pawn at e2. And when you get two pawns together on the 7th or 2nd rank, yeah, they're very, very powerful. And his king would be suffocated in this box here, as you saw. So after takes, pawn there, and after promoting, he resigned, of course, because of the threat. Takes, and whatever he blocks with, a knight's coming to e2 checkmate. So, interesting game. Interesting game. Where was the important turning point? See if I can identify where things went wrong for him and right for me. Let's say, yeah, this tactic right here didn't turn out in his favor, so maybe e3 wasn't correct. Maybe just castling instead, and the game remains up in the air. I think after e4, that's sacrificing a little bit of material, and I also get something of an initiative. So, I think that's probably the turning point of the game. So, all right, good game, Bilatov. And anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this analysis, and I'll be back later. Thanks, guys.